Welcome to the Theory of Computation lecture on asymptotics. I'm Jason Hartline. I'm a professor at Northwestern University. Before we dive into this lecture, I'm going to give you a little bit of my background. So I grew up in Newport News, Virginia, which is the South. I did my undergrad at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. I was a PhD student at University of Washington in Seattle. Before joining Northwestern, I did a postdoctoral fellowship at Carnegie Mellon University and was a researcher at Microsoft Research. Uh, the reason why I'm in theoretical computer science, uh, well, first, initially, uh, I was, swept into it by the passion and excitement imparted by a number of really fantastic instructors that I had as an undergraduate student at Cornell University. Uh, Now, however, 20 years later, uh, I, continue to be amazed by the um, incredible power that the computational metaphor has in, helping understand, uh, all the things that are happening around us in the world, uh, and uh, this sort of the theory of computation is uh, a new science that's going to make possible to understand things that we were unable to understand before. I'm My research focuses in particular on the connections between theoretical computer science and theoretical economics. Uh, to give you a introduction to one of my research projects, I want to talk a little bit about peer grading. So what I'd like to do is uh, think about the work that's happening uh, as we conduct ourselves in a, a course over the course of a term, like this course that you're taking right now when you're watching this lecture. Uh, so in the course, there are the various entities that are going to be uh, doing work or computation. The students are locally optimizing, uh, uh, in their own interests and working to achieve their own goals. There's the grader and instructor who are trying to, uh, follow uh, the to grade according to the grading rubrics, and they, may not always, uh, uh, they may make mistakes themselves. There's the syllabus, which maps the actions that everyone involved in the course takes, maps those actions onto grades. Uh, an important property of such modeling the classroom as a computer is the students' incentives, uh, because that's what motivates the students to act in the way that they do. And students are probably incentivized by minimizing the amount of work they have to do. They probably want to maximize the grade that they get, and they may or may not care about learning the material in the course. Of course, the goal of the instructor in the university is to efficiently run their classes, so minimize work, effectively run those classes, so maximize learning, and to do both of these things in a way that fairly assesses students in the course. So one of the things that I want to raise for you uh, to to as an example of why taking this computational view on the classroom might be effective, is to evaluate the following two strategies for grading coursework. So option A, we have one TA grade all 100 homeworks that were turned in for an assignment. And option B is we have the TA grade a handful of the homeworks uh, and have each of the students in the class grade 3 of their peers' homeworks. Okay, which of these two is faster? Which is more accurate? Which would be a better way to do grading in a class? Um, and I think it should be clear that approach A is a serial computation where the TA has to grade one homework at a time, and it takes one person, uh, a fair amount of time to grade than 100 homeworks. Whereas approach B is a parallel computation. The 100 students can grade their three homeworks, their three peers' homeworks in parallel, uh, and this can potentially be done a lot faster than the one TA can grade all 100 of the homeworks. Um, which of these is more accurate? Now, there are places where both of them might be inaccurate. Approach A might be inaccurate because after grading many homeworks, the TA is exhausted and is going to be potentially making mistakes. Approach B might not might be inaccurate because maybe the students don't know as much as the TA, and so they might not know how to correctly grade the assignment. Um, of course, in approach B, where we have if each of 100 students grade 3 of their peers' homeworks, then we actually have 3 peer reviews for each homework. And so rather than just one TA grade for the homework, we had 3 peer reviews, then we could potentially average them or remove outliers or do other sort of machine learning style approaches to try to infer what accurate grades ought to be. Um, so it should be clear that approach B is going to be faster, which is more accurate, which is better. That's what we hope to understand with this research project. Two of the main things that we're concerned with in this research project are how you would incentivize peer reviews and whether peer reviewing in a class improves learning outcomes. So just briefly on both of these issues, um, any work that you assign in a course, if you want it to be done well and accurately, you need to, uh, uh, anything you assign, you must be grading. So we have to basically grade the grading, um, and how should we do that to incentivize the peers in the class to put a reasonable amount of effort into coming up with accurate, good grades for their peers' work? The other main thing we care about is learning outcomes. In fact, learning outcomes are, in some sense, the only thing we care about when running a course. Um, and if we're going to assign to students to grade each other's homeworks, then it better be that grading each other's homeworks improves the learning of the student doing the grading. This is something that anecdotally we observe in the classes where we've run peer grading, uh, and anecdotally, uh, it seems that uh, uh, especially for open-ended assignments, uh, when a student does grading of another student's work, uh, this actually helps reinforce the concepts. It helps them understand what good solutions and bad solutions look like and enables them to understand what they need to do to produce better solutions. So we find that it's incredibly effective for getting students to produce much higher quality work, which um, uh, we think is related to having better learning outcomes. And again, this is a research project, and so one of the things we're trying to evaluate is exactly uh, how much better the learning outcomes are. Great. So um, This lecture is going to be on asymptotics. Uh, this material should be a review for many of you from stuff you've covered previously in discrete math or in data structures, or perhaps you took an algorithms course and had asymptotics. The lecture is divided into 3 videos. In the first video, we'll be reviewing the sort of classical big O notation, uh, which is showing asymptotic upper bounds on the amount of resources that are used by a computation. In video 2, we'll look at variations of big O notation, which let you express exact bounds, lower bounds, and strict bounds. And in video 3, we're going to look at the relationship between or the asymptotics of logarithmic functions. Logarithmic functions come up in many places in computation, and understanding their asymptotics is important.